So, the Wheel of the Year. There are, I think, two fundamental ways of approaching the Wheel of the Year. And the first is to think about the eightfold festivals popular in Wiccan and Indra practice. And the other way is to think about the year as a real and experienced thing. In terms of the 8 festivals, it's something I'm quite uneasy about. I think they're problematic, not least because they don't represent a historical tradition. They come from the combined efforts of Gerald Gardner and Ross Nichols, so they're quite a modern thing. Historically, nobody honoured the equinoxes as far as we know, and communities that were honouring what you might call cross-quarter festivals or fire festivals tended not to honour all of them. So there's a bit of an issue there. If it's something that you want to look at, I can recommend reading Stations of the Sun by Ronald Hutton, particularly, to explore this. There are lots of different traditions around the UK and beyond the UK, of course, as well, that fall at certain times in the year and connect to certain practices. So, for example, in agricultural areas, you'd expect to get a plough Monday in early January. And I think it's well worth looking at what calendar events go with the place you live in and connect to the kinds of things that your ancestors of place would have been doing where you are. The great advantage of the eightfold Wheel of the Year is that everybody knows when it is. So if you want to get a bunch of pagans together to do something, it's quite a good focal point. And I think in terms of celebrating ancestral dates, it's got a certain something. But again, here it's flawed because we've been through a number of calendar changes. The current dates we have were a refixing of the calendar because the dates had slid badly when people didn't quite understand how the sun cycles worked. And the net result might not be very representative of when our ancestors were celebrating anyway. So there's that. But working with the Wheel of the Year as you experience it leaves a lot more options and far less to argue with, because whatever is happening is clearly what's happening. And that can be incredibly localised. A few hundred miles of difference will change when the first flowers come or when you get the frosts or whether or not it snows. And of course, when you think about paganism on a global scale, we're all dealing with really different things at really different times of the year. So for me, the important thing with the Wheel of the Year is to be going outside regularly, almost every day if I can, if the weather's not too horrible, and seeing what's happening. What are the trees doing? What are the birds doing? What's growing that wasn't growing before? What's dying that wasn't dying before? And to make those constant observations and connections between me and the place that I am, and to understand the wheel as something that I'm living in, that I'm experiencing, not as an abstract concept, not as a kind of a handful of times a year for ritual purposes, but a day-to-day lived thing. And I think when you approach it that way, it's a really powerful thing to work with. When you approach it from an 8 big festivals, and I've been at rituals that were sort of steered by this, where you're stood there at Lammas supposedly celebrating the harvest, but actually what you've got is a flood, or autumn equinox rituals when it was so cold and foggy and frosty that it felt like winter. The seasons have a habit of not quite delivering what the ritual guidebooks say should be going on right now. You know, if you're out at Beltane and it's been hot for weeks and it's a heat wave, then it's kind of weird saying, "Oh, it's the beginning of summer," because it's not. Summer clearly started weeks before. So I would always say, look at what is actually going on where you are, because that's right. And if that doesn't fit for whatever reason with what's supposed to be going on, then go with nature as you experience it, because that's a lot more meaningful. I blog about this at Sage Woman Blogs once a month. I've got Nimwe's Alternative Wheel of the Year. So if you want to check in with me as I grumble regularly about how the standard wheel doesn't quite work and all the things, all the narratives and experiences that you can't get into those 8 festivals, then do come over and have a look. Thank you.